Encounter is brought to you by the Broome County Council of Churches, where we connect compassion with needs as we inspire growth with dignity. You'll find us in special places throughout the community. For those who remain hungry, we provide meals. For those who are challenged, we build wheelchair ramps. We comfort those who are ill, minister to those who are confined, and we remain an advocate for change and understanding on behalf of every element of our community. Connect and inspire. Encounter the Broome County Council of Churches.
Hello, I'm Reverend Alicia Dixon-Gerard, one of your hosts of Encounter, a show of the Broome County Council of Churches, where we talk about faith and community and current events and all sorts of good stuff. Today, we're going to talk about the holiday season and some of the common holidays that we celebrate during this time of year. But before that, I want to introduce my guest. I have not one, not two, but three fabulous guests today with me. I have Dr. Sharon Bryant, Reverend Damond Wilson, and Rabbi Micah Friedman with me. And I'm so happy to have them on this show. So any one of you jump in, tell us about you, whatever you want to share.
Oh, I'm Sharon Bryant. I'm the Associate Dean for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Associate Professor of the Public Health Program at the Decker at the Decker College of Nursing and Health Sciences. And I've been celebrating Kwanzaa since the 70s.
Oh, wow. Yes. And you're at Binghamton University.
And I'm at Binghamton University.
Yeah.
All right. Well, my name is Reverend Damond Wilson. I am the senior pastor of Trinity AME Zion, located in the First Ward. I am a community activist, and I am a servant. So I'm just happy to be here, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yes.
And hi, everyone. My name is Micah, or Micah Friedman. I recently moved to the area to become the rabbi of Temple Israel in Vestal. So my role is really to be a shepherd, a teacher, a guide, and a community builder in our local Jewish community here.
Yeah.
I'm glad to get to be on to talk about some holidays together.
Yeah, and I love that. That's already like a commonality between you all, because I think this is the first time you all are meeting, even though I know you all.
Well, I met Reverend at the NAACP meeting,
Right.
since it's held at his church.
Right. Okay, and you all are like community focused and servant leaders. I love that about you all. Yeah, so the holiday season is upon us, and this month we do Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa, which all seem like they're very divergent, but I honestly think we maybe have more in common than we think. So that's why the idea occurred to me to talk about this month. But let's kind of learn a little bit more, see how much our audience know. We should have had a test, a quiz, a survey with a prize.
Right.
But let me start with Hanukkah. Tell us more about what Hanukkah is and what sort of celebration it is in the Jewish community.
Sure. So I will say Hanukkah is a joyous holiday, a long historically precedented holiday, though I think has grown in importance in recent years, especially in this country.
Yeah.
When we in Jewish community often will refer to the holidays, we think about our fall holiday cycle with Jewish New Year. But in this country, we often celebrate holidays in this time of winter, in this dark time of December. Right? And I think in some ways, maybe I'm getting ahead of the game a little bit, but I think that's one of the uniting points between these three holidays is the practice, the spiritual insight of bringing light in a time of shorter days and greater darkness.
Okay, you're stealing my thunder.
I know. I'll try to do a short little summary of Hanukkah. You may have heard before a kind of classic version of the Hanukkah story that the Maccabees, a small ragtag group of Hebrews, were resisting a conquering Greek empire, the Hasmoneans, the Hashmonaim, who made it illegal to practice Israelite religion, to practice Jewish faith, and the Maccabees resisted using even as a much smaller force against a much more powerful army. And the first thing they did when reconquering the ancient temple was to light the menorah, the lamp in the temple, which is supposed to burn every day of the year. Even though there wasn't enough oil to last for the time it would take for the oil to burn, to make more oil, they lit the lamp anyways, and according to rabbinic tradition, miraculously the oil kept burning for all 8 days. I think the piece I would like to add, I think, is what was so important about lighting the menorah to begin with? What's this lamp in the temple represent? And even to this day, though not in the shape of menorah, every synagogue you'll walk into anywhere in the world has a lamp, a light that's burning 24/7, which represents our constant understanding of our need to be drawn in relationship towards our Creator, towards the source of life, our constant desire to be of service in the world and to contribute to the light and the good. And according to some teachers in Jewish tradition, that is the big principle, sort of. That's the big goal. So, of course, it comes to make sense that would be what the Maccabees understood to be a sort of symbolic priority when they were recovering the temple, that to reignite a guiding light of purpose for the Jewish people.
Yeah, purpose and being drawn to the Creator. And it's interesting that sociologists, psychologists, historians have observed that desire to worship someone greater than oneself across humanity, across time and space and culture, race, ethnicity, nationality. That's just something innate in us. So even if you're not a believer in any particular faith per se, I do think there's some legitimacy to that observation, that in humanity we do have this kind of innate desire to have purpose and to be drawn to things greater than ourselves that are good. Yeah, and so that light kind of symbolizes that.
Right, and it takes work to keep the flames alive, right, of purpose.
Yeah,
doing
for
service
sure.
for the greater good, right?
Yeah.
And I think, all of us have light as a part of our celebrations because Kwanzaa has the 7 candles.
Yes.
And that you light that you light. So it's nice to see the commonality among all of our celebrations.
Right. Again, scaling my thunder, but that's okay.
Right.
We'll go there. So tell us about the light of Kwanzaa. Tell us more about Kwanzaa. It might be a holiday least familiar to our audience. So tell us a little bit about the background and history and what it is.
Yeah, because Kwanzaa, many of our holidays, as you know, are religious, but this is a cultural holiday.
Right.
And it was started by Dr. Karenga in 1966, somewhat in response to what was happening after the riots in Watts and some of the unrest in the country, but wanting to get African Americans a sense of being connected to the continent of Africa.
Yeah.
For many of our audience, they may not realize that it was a time in which African Americans, we knew we came from Africa, but many of us could not trace our roots. Like now we have ancestry and all these things can give us some ideas of where we come from. But he wanted us to have a stronger connection to the continent. So all of the words from Kwanzaa are Swahili words. Kwanzaa means the first fruits.
Yes.
And if you think about, cross-culturally, there are a lot of kind of harvest holidays.
Yes.
And so it makes sense that that if he was developing one, he would be in alignment with a lot of indigenous kinds of peoples, bringing the first fruits.
Yes.
The first fruits to the new year. 7, the number 7 is a complete number. It's a special number, and so he has 7 principles. Then goes the Saba, and I have to have a cheat sheet, but in case I forget one of the principles. But there's 7, so there's Umoja, unity, Jakalia, self-determination, Ujama, cooperative economics, Ujima, collective work, Nia, purpose, Kumba, creativity, and Imani, faith. And what's nice about this, unlike some of the other religious holidays, if many of us, if you're not of that religion, you may not feel comfortable, attending a celebration. But this one is a celebration of the community of any faith.
Right.
And I grew up in San Diego, and we started practicing it in the community in the 70s using, we have a local library called the Malcolm X Library, and that would be the site of celebrating the last day. And we would come together as a community with Black storytellers and music and poetry to come and reaffirm our commitment to our greater community.
Which is another thread of commonality, because Hanukkah too is about a community trying to maintain its identity and its sense of purpose and its pride in itself of who it's created to be. And similarly with African Americans and people of African descent throughout the Americas, the Kwanzaa kind of has spread probably more in the United States, but it's one of those common threads of let's remember who we are and that we've all been created kind of with a purpose and like an innate sense of worth. And that communal idea of working together to help one another is, I think, common throughout various cultures and cultural, racial, ethnic identities. And I remember one person asking me one time, do you prefer African American or do you prefer Black? That's a whole different conversation. That's a whole different conversation. And kind of not realizing that all people of African descent came from Africa. Like she did not know that. She was a white American. She did not know that, and having to explain that, we were brought here not by choice, and that part of the process of slavery was erasing that heritage and identity on purpose. And so when you think of the Maccabees trying to prevent being erased from history, this is another kind of cross-cultural common thread of, hey, we're cool how we are created and meant to be.
Absolutely.
And I'm glad you raised that point because there is definitely a cultural side to Christmas. It's probably one of the more well familiarized holidays, but it over time it's become more about Santa and the gifts than the birth of Jesus Christ. And again, I say that because that's more of the cultural side that's kind of taken over. So I want to start off and say there's nothing wrong with, celebrating Christmas and, telling the little ones about Santa and, reading the night before Christmas. Those are all good traditions to hold on to, but just knowing that that is the cultural side of the holiday versus the religious side. So for those who do know about Christmas, it's based on, at least for the Christian faith, it's based on the birth of Jesus Christ. It is a representation of God's gift, so the heavenly creator, to the world. And just a little synopsis of the story, Joseph and Mary, Jesus' parents, during a time under Roman occupation. We talked about Greek occupation before, but some little time later, Rome conquered the land and forced families to be a part of a census. So every family needed to be counted. So in order to do that, you need to travel to your place of origin. And so for Joseph, it was the town of Bethlehem. So they go on this journey to Bethlehem, and when they get there, they're met with the surprise that there's no room for them in the inn. So the innkeeper tells them, hey, I don't have a room, but I have a barn out back. So, of course, them being from out of town, not many options, they took that and they that was the place of the birth of Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And there's other parts of the story that go along with that, like the wise men who come bearing gifts, the shepherds in the field who see the angels, and again going to our theme of light, seeing the guiding light.
Guiding light.
It's one of those holidays that, again, has a cultural aspect, but also a religious aspect. And depending on what people's faith tradition is, it depends, on which side they choose to focus on.
Right.
But I do want to raise that, because we were talking about how, there is that cultural side to our holidays.
Yes, yes. Thank you for bringing that point up, because it ties into something else I want to talk about. Just want to quickly say, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to or watching Encounter, a show of the Broome County Council of Churches. You're here with Reverend Alicia Dixon Gerard, and we're talking the holidays, Hanukkah, Christmas, and Kwanzaa. So part of the response to Christmas kind of becoming more secularized, say that word 3 times fast, Kwanzaa was in part a response to that too. So cultural identity, remembering where people of African descent have come from, and also saying maybe we need to focus a little less on the commercialization, on Santa and the presents, and a little bit more on what it means to be community. So that's also as part of the history of Kwanzaa.
So much gift-centered.
Right.
Although the last day, there can be some gift sharing, but it's creativity, it's homemade, it's things that you would make with your hands that you might bring to share, but it's not as gift focused, and it's more on what's nice about how many people practice it is when each day you have a word, like around the dining table or around breakfast, people can say purpose. Okay, what is your understanding of purpose? And, collectively as a family, we can be supportive of each other as moving on into the new year around our purpose, or, around our faith and however we want to exhibit. So it's nice that it's not just a time of going in, but also trying to think about collectively how we can use our gifts.
Yes. How about Hanukkah? Is there a different principle for each of the 8 days?
I did grow up with a reading my mom would do as we'd light the candles each day that would highlight, I think, similarly a different value that's central to Judaism. Even though I did that for years, I couldn't tell you which value each night, but things like hospitality, compassion, generosity, responsibility, often with the Hebrew phrase that expresses it in a traditional framework. Though I will say Hanukkah itself as a word means dedication or sort of rededication. I hear a strong echo of that in the values and principles of Kwanzaa, that there's a sense of rededicating as a family and as a community to the sort of core values that can help African American communities to strengthen their sense of roots and heritage, as well as the ability to take care of one another, right, and to build opportunities for thriving. I will say, I think also, I share in this, bit of a sense of maybe I'll just say skepticism about some of the gift and consumer-centered celebration of these holidays. People like to give gifts, so I can't say there was never any gift giving in Hanukkah before the contemporary commercialization of the winter season, but it was certainly not ubiquitous or a central practice, right? In contrast, the sort of traditional framework for what you do when you light the candles is to take half an hour to not do work, but to simply look at the candles with the people in your home, right? And to light the candles in a way that can be seen by others. There's a framework of pirsume nisa, of publicizing the miracle. So to put the menorah, the Chanukiah, in your doorway or in your window, which also is an invitation to people to come and to take a little bit of time to be together and to rededicate ourselves to looking for light, right? To trying to appreciate, even in the darkest of the days of the year, the light that we can find.
And I did want to raise one thing about Christmas, and this is really more for traditional faiths under the Christian umbrella, is the season of Advent.
Yes.
That's definitely a part of the Christmas holiday, and for those who are unfamiliar with that, it's the weeks leading up to Christmas, where, like Hanukkah, there's a candle that's lit that represents a different spiritual attribute, like joy, peace, prophecy, all the way up until the day of Christmas, where the Christ candle is actually lit. And what the Christian tradition is supposed to represent is, okay, Christ coming into the world. And it kind of prepares people for that coming of Christ. So there's actually two applications for Advent, one for his first coming, one for his second coming, but at least for the Christmas season, it's dedicated to the first coming of Christ.
Right, and there's 4 candles, and then the Christ candle at the end. And I love this concept of taking a moment to have some receptivity and preparation of and recognition of gift, of the gift that Creator has given, whether it's the gift of the miracle of the oil lasting long enough for the Maccabees to have success and rededicate the temple, the miracle for Christians of the birth of Christ, and I think the miracle for African people of African descent throughout the Americas and the world, the miracle of survival, of enslavement and the attempt again to erase identity, erase culture. So all of those are kind of miracles. So this time to kind of pause and really reflect and think about that, these gifts that we've been given, and celebrate these gifts that we've been given. And also, I love that idea of it being seen, because that's part of the purpose of light, is for light to be seen and sharing it in a hospitable way. So kind of extending hospitality to others who may not know what you're doing or understand what you're doing, but may want to become part of a new community in a way of learning about these things. So this issue of hospitality, with inviting people who might see the menorah in, or whether it's the inn, no room at the inn, and inviting family around the table to light the Kwanzaa candles and having that conversation about the meaning of those words, purpose, faith, cooperative economics, and that sort of thing. So, that's good stuff. Say more about that, any of you.
But it also is, our candles are red, black, and green. So red for the blood that was shed on our journey, and also our time in this country. And the green is, fertility, future, that we're still here, that we still have prospered, and black for the people. I grew up at a time when people used to have the red, black, and green flag, flying from their homes. We don't see it as much currently, but that was centered for our communities, because just trying to anything that we could do to feel a connection to a continent.
Right, our home, our home, which is kind of another theme of Joseph went back to his hometown. The Maccabees were fighting against invaders in their home, and so standing up for that sense of home and kind of knowing the story behind these holidays. Storytelling seems to be another important feature as part of the holiday season, knowing the history and the story and the stories we tell around the table, and the stories we tell even publicly that, it's not about Santa. Like, for example, we're not trying to diss Santa, y'all. Santa can do his thing. Santa can do his thing. But just saying that there's a different story that has a deeper sense of meaning and significance around what we do.
But also to kind of elevate the humble food products. Like, you know, like you can practice Kwanzaa, you don't need expensive food, you don't need, but it's like bringing corn, it's having oranges, it's peanuts, it's kind of humble things that come from our own cultural background, but kind of celebrating those things that we have in common as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the underlying themes that goes overlooked in the Christmas holiday is the theme of new life. There's a theme that, you know, because of this gift, we are celebrating a newness of life that where we have, you know, second chances.
Yes.
And I think that's really important for us in our time, because we're so quick to write people off and, you know, not to give people chances, and to have a holiday that just represents a second chance, I think it speaks volumes.
As they say, calling people in instead of calling people out.
Right. Calling people in instead of calling people out. I like that.
Beautiful and it's inspiring.
Right.
I'll give just a quick food comment, I guess, before kind of the deeper theme. But, one of the really ancient traditions around Judaism is to eat simple foods that are fried in oil. Fried in oil to represent the oil
that lasted.
that burned, right? The pure olive oil on the menorah, right? But simply putting potato and onion into an oil and making a latke, a pancake, you know, or a little ball of dough and turning it into a donut, and understanding that you can create something delicious and warm, even and special, even with the most sort of simple foods that we make eat all year round. A lot of potatoes and Eastern European, Ashkenazi culture, certainly. But just to pick up this storytelling trend, I think also part of the way that the food connects is and that storytelling is connective, is that it helps us to orient ourselves towards where we come from, right? To have a sense of roots and heritage, and to see past the blinders of our current moment, right? And I think in some ways I hear that in all of the way that we're talking about these holidays, that we hope that participating in these rituals and these practices and these celebrations can connect us with other people now, as well as other people who came before us, and hopefully, God willing, many generations to come will enjoy and celebrate these holidays too.
Yeah,
Nice.
I like that. What a great place to end, connecting us to those who have come before, those with us now, and those who will come after. Thank you all. I've had Dr. Sharon Bryant and Reverend Damond Wilson and Rabbi Micah Friedman with me today. You guys are awesome. Thank you for making the time to celebrate with Encounter and the Council of Churches the holiday season.